I found the messages by accident. 3 years of them. 3 years of him telling someone else soon, while he told me forever. I wasn't his wife. I was his waiting room. And the worst part? I thanked him every single day for a love that was never actually mine. Hey, before I get into this, I just need to say it out loud once, okay? If you've ever found out you were loved less than you thought you were, you're gonna feel this one. Stay till the end. I promise it gets worse before it gets better. For 6 years, I thought I had a good marriage. Not a fireworks and fairy tale marriage. A comfortable one. My husband, Corwin, was steady, reliable. He remembered to take the trash out on Thursdays, and he never forgot my mother's birthday. We had a house in a quiet neighborhood, 2 decent incomes, and a life that looked, from the outside, like something people would call solid. I used to describe it that way myself. Solid. Like I was talking about a foundation and not a marriage. But here's the thing about foundations. You don't check them until something starts to crack. And looking back now, there were cracks everywhere. He never wanted to talk more than a year or 2 into the future. Every time I brought up things like moving or having kids, or even just repainting the guest room, he'd get this look. Distant. Almost bored, like I was asking him to plan a trip he didn't want to take. And there was a name. Halston. He mentioned her exactly once early on, called her someone from before, and then never said her name again. Not once in 6 years. I used to think that was normal. Now I know silence like that isn't peace. It's a door being held shut. I remember one night, maybe 2 years ago, his phone buzzed on the kitchen counter and he flipped it face down so fast I almost didn't see it happen. I didn't say anything. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that's just what marriage looks like after a while. A little privacy, a little distance, nothing to worry about. I didn't know that phone would end up being the reason my whole life cracked open. Not yet. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. I needed to print a boarding pass for a work trip, and my laptop was being slow, so I grabbed his instead. That's it. That's the whole dramatic setup, a slow laptop. While I was waiting for the printer to connect, his cloud backup synced in the background, and a folder of old text threads popped up on the screen. I wasn't snooping. I want to be really clear about that, because for a long time I felt guilty, like I'd done something wrong just by seeing it. But I saw her name, Halston. Again, except this time it wasn't casual. It wasn't someone from before. The tone of those messages was tender, aching, the kind of tone you use with someone you never actually let go of. I told myself I'd close the laptop. I didn't. I sat down at the kitchen table and I just read, message after message. I wasn't trying to catch him in anything. I think some small, terrified part of me was trying to prove myself wrong. And then I found the one that stopped my whole body cold. He'd written to her years ago. I married her because you told me to move on. I did what you said. I just never stopped. I read that sentence maybe 10 times. I remember the sound of the printer finishing my boarding pass in the other room, this small mechanical hum, completely indifferent to the fact that my entire life had just quietly ended. He married me because someone else told him to. I wasn't chosen, I was assigned. Once you see something like that, you can't unsee it. Over the next few weeks, I started reconstructing the timeline, piece by piece, like putting together a puzzle I never wanted the picture of. Corwin had loved Halston first, really loved her. Something happened, I still didn't know what, and she left, and less than a year later, he married me. A year. I used to think our whirlwind engagement was romantic. Turns out it was just convenient timing for a man trying to fill a hole in his life as fast as possible. I confronted him, gently at first, because I still wanted him to make me feel crazy for doubting him. I wanted him to reassure me. I told him I'd seen the messages. I told him about Houston's name, and I watched his face do this thing where it went completely smooth, like water settling. That's ancient history. You're overthinking this. Classic. So clean, so rehearsed. And I let it go. Outwardly, anyway. Inside, something had shifted permanently. I wasn't the woman trusting her husband anymore. I was a woman watching him. And once you start watching, you notice everything. The way his mother always found small ways to make me feel like a guest at my own dinner table. The way big decisions, buying the house, choosing the car, even picking our vacation spots, always somehow ended up being his decisions, dressed up as ours. I used to blame myself for all of it. I told myself if I just loved harder, tried harder, gave more of myself, eventually it would even out. It never evens out. That's the cruel little secret nobody tells you. The more you give to someone who's already checked out, the easier you make it for them to keep checking out. Then I found the birthday reminder. It was saved in his phone under a contact labeled simply, H, don't forget this year. Not Halston, just H, like she was too important to name and too dangerous to name at the same time. That was the night I stopped sleeping properly. And then came the twist I never saw coming, because up to that point I thought I was grieving a ghost, some old flame from before we even met, someone who existed only in his past. I was wrong. Halston wasn't in his past. She was 2 buildings down from his office. She worked at a firm he did business with regularly, and when I finally got access to his calendar, his actual real-time current calendar, I found lunch appointments with her going back over a year, recurring, time-stamped, labeled with some vague, meaningless project name so it wouldn't raise questions if I ever looked. That's when I understood. I wasn't his wife. I was his backup plan with a ring on it. This wasn't heartbreak over something that ended years ago. This was a betrayal happening in real time, while I made his coffee every morning and asked him how his day went. I want you to understand something about me here, because it matters for what happens next. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't confront him in some big dramatic scene like you'd see in a movie. Something in me went very, very quiet instead. Calm, almost. The kind of calm that only shows up when a person has finally stopped hoping. I started documenting everything: screenshots, financial statements, joint account activity, receipts from business lunches that lined up exactly with her name in his calendar. I wasn't building a case for revenge. I was building a case for myself, for my own sanity, because some small, wounded part of me still needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. The only person I told was my friend Bridget, someone I'd worked with for years, someone steady and grounded who never once told me what to do. She just let me talk, let me cry, let me sit in the ugliness of it without rushing me toward a decision. Having her in my corner was the only thing that kept this whole period from swallowing me whole. Meanwhile, Corwin got careless, the way people do when they think they've never been caught. A receipt fell out of his coat pocket, a jewelry store, a piece I never received, never saw, never even heard about. And then, one afternoon, while I was looking through some old paperwork for our taxes, I found a rental agreement for a storage unit, in his name, one I never knew existed. I still had a spare key from years earlier from some errand I barely remembered running for him. So one afternoon, while he was at work, I drove there myself. No dramatic break-in, just a woman, a key, and a door she had every right to open. Inside, I found old letters from Halston, photographs, a ring box that had never been meant for me, and a folder, an actual folder full of apartment listings and a half-written relocation plan dated 8 months earlier. 8 months. While I was planning our anniversary dinner, he was planning an exit that didn't include me. That was the moment I finally broke. Not with rage, with grief. I sat down right there on the concrete floor of that storage unit, and I cried in a way I hadn't let myself cry in years. Not for the marriage I thought I had, for the years I would never get back, years I spent trying to fix something that was never broken on my end at all. And then, tucked into the back of that same folder, I found one more envelope, addressed to me, unopened, dated 2 years ago. My hands were shaking so badly I almost couldn't get it open. Inside was a letter from Corwin, to me, written 2 years earlier and never sent. In it, he almost confessed everything. He wrote about Halston, about how he never fully let her go, about how guilty he felt marrying me while some part of his heart stayed somewhere else. He asked in that letter for my forgiveness in advance, for forgiveness for something he knew he was about to keep doing anyway. I sat with that letter for a long time because in a strange way it made things worse, not better. It meant he knew exactly what he was doing to me the whole time, and he chose comfort over honesty every single day for years. That letter wasn't an apology, it was a receipt, proof that this wasn't confusion or weakness. It was a choice made over and over again. That was the moment I stopped wanting to fix it. I didn't want to scream at him. I didn't want a confrontation where he'd twist my pain into me overreacting one more time. I wanted out, quietly, completely, on my own terms. So that's exactly what I did. Before I said a single word to him, I met with a lawyer. I moved what money I could into an account he didn't know about. I found a place to stay, quietly, through Gridget's help, without leaving a trail he could question me on later. For the first time in years, I wasn't asking for his permission to plan my own life. The night I finally told him, there was no yelling, no scene. I just sat across from him at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd once read those messages that started all of this, and I told him I knew everything. I placed the storage unit key on the table between us, and I watched something in his face collapse. He tried to backpedal, tried the same tired lines. "You're overthinking this. It's not what it looks like." But this time, the words had nowhere to land. I wasn't the same woman who used to accept them. That night, he called me 17 times. I didn't answer once. 6 months later, I'm in a small apartment that's entirely mine. Nobody's name on the lease but mine. I go to therapy on Wednesdays. I've stopped attending family dinners where I never really belonged in the first place. It isn't a victorious ending, not the way movies like to wrap these things up with a bow. Some days I still grieve the marriage I thought I had, even while I'm endlessly relieved to be free of the one I actually had. Both things are true at the same time. That's just how healing works, I've learned. It's not clean, it's not linear, and anyone who tells you otherwise has never actually lived through it. A few weeks ago, I ran into Bridget for coffee, and I told her something I hadn't even fully admitted to myself yet, that for the first time in years, my name feels like it belongs to me again. Not Corwin's wife, just Josie, just Joe. That night, I finally deleted the last photo I had from our wedding day, not out of anger, just closure. A door closing quietly the way it probably should have opened in the first place. I used to think being chosen meant being loved. Now I know better. Sometimes you're not the love story, you're just the safe place someone hides in while they wait for the one they really want. I'm done being anyone's waiting room. I'd rather be alone than second. If this hits something in you, tell me in the comments, have you ever found out you were the safe choice instead of the real one? Subscribe if you want more stories like this one. And hey, you deserve to be someone's first choice, not their backup plan.